You're listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
Check, check, 1, 2. Look like a little country, some rock and roll and blues. 'Cause we sure love playing for good people like you. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2.
Welcome to Music Local and Sustainable, the radio show that features discussions with and the music of local musicians. I am your host, Dave Lake. Tonight we're with Craig Tanner. Craig is probably best known by music fans as a member of the band American Hologram. However, among local musicians, he is known for his open mics at Abe's on Lincoln and for his generous support by helping others get gigs locally. Welcome, Craig Tanner.
Thanks, David.
Well, let's start with my favorite song, and that is The Invisible Man.
Before I became the man no one could see, I was a lot like you, you were a lot like me, both wanting something that no one should be, while the crown of the century rolls on. I was still solid, I worked like a dog, well, I broke down dream of living high on the hog, but the butcher was hungry, the end fell like a fog that closes the light of the world. I'm so sorry to knock on your door, oh, I swear you've seen me before, oh, I promise to be just as quiet as I can. There's no need to be invisible, man. Well, when I started to fade, well, I slept in the park, but they could still see me, so they sent me to bark by a swamp near the factory where the water runs dark. And there I lived in a hole in the ground. It's where I got stripped of my uniform that reflected the light and made me someone. It wasn't until my long first return that I learned the fate of my life. So sorry to knock on your door, oh, I swear you've seen me before, oh, I promise to be just as quiet as I can. There's no need to be invisible, man. 100-room mansion at the top of the hill. It's never been lived in, it was built for the thrill of spending the paper made from the kill. How I'd kill for room tonight. Walk past the mansion to the shelter for men. Handful of coins, will they let me in? It was colder than a man can live in his skin. If you could see me, it'd give you a fright. I'm so sorry to knock on your door, oh, I swear you've seen me before, oh, I promise to be just as quiet as I can.
Tell us a little bit about the origin of this song.
I was in Charleston, South Carolina with American Hologram. We had played a gig the night before, and I'm an early riser, and I like to walk, and walking is a big part of my creative process. And so I walked from a house that we were standing over by the Citadel downtown and got to a park downtown, and there was a guy sitting on a bench, and went up to talk to him and had a conversation with him. And after the conversation, I wrote down in my journal the word "the invisible man," just based on his energy and what he was going through. A little bit later in the day, before we left to go back to Savannah, I actually wrote what became the first line of the song. There was something about meeting him that really motivated me to want to say something, and I liked the idea, and I really liked the first line, and I had that for a while, and then had a daughter 11 months ago, and we got stuck in the hospital for a while. There were some complications early on, and had a lot of sitting around to do, and had my journals, and that was an idea I really wanted to work on, and had a lot of time, and I did something I've never done before. I took the first line, came up with the first verse, and really didn't know where the story was going to go, and then I just started writing verses. I maybe wrote 30 verses, and then once I had all those verses, then I could see the story, and then I spent a lot more time once I kind of knew where I wanted to go, working on the lyrics. So it was a song that I spent a lot of time on.
In the song, you refer to the crime of the century as being the source of this individual's problems.
Right.
What is the crime of the century?
The crime of the century is poetic, and that works in the context of the song, but the human race has removed itself from having limits. We have this delusion that we have dominion over the earth, and we live in a market system that not only has limits, it encourages us to consume and do things in an unlimited way. And not only is it not working out well for us in terms of needlessly burning through resources and creating all kinds of environmental problems, it creates classism, and it creates an underclass of people who fall into the category of this person who was very much in a down and out situation.
I like the song particularly because it tells a very interesting story, but also because many of the lines are just so poignant. For instance, when the narrator of the song realizes perhaps what it was that made him invisible, there's the line, "Stripped of my uniform that reflected the light that made me someone." Could be his job, could be his suit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about the system in which we live. People think they have a lot of choices, but there's a very narrow range of choices and behaviors that are accepted. That's one of the ways that we consciously sort of perpetuate a market system that's money-based. I mean, the obvious thing when you talk about somebody that's homeless is, okay, they don't have shelter anymore, they don't have a home, but there is a process that happens to people if you talk to people that are homeless. And one of the things that people are the most afraid about, and one of the biggest challenges for a homeless person, is the way they show up physically and what they wear, and also just the way that they smell. I've had an enormous number of conversations with homeless people about that idea, and so once you get outside of the lane that is accepted in terms of what you wear and how you're physically showing up, then you start to push the limits of how people will connect with you in public. And I mean, everybody that's hearing this knows what I'm talking about. You know, if you walk through a city, for mostly what's happening is we are avoiding people that present, even from a distance, as being homeless. And obviously, if it's from a distance, a lot of that is going to be things that are physical and visual and very, very basic. And one of those basic things is the way people are dressed.
Tonight, we're talking with singer-songwriter Craig Tanner. This could be thought of, perhaps, as an attack on the 1%. There's a line in there, "The 100-room mansion at the top of the hill, it's never been lived in. It was built for the thrill. Spending the paper made from the kill." Yeah,
I mean, the song has a lot of verses, and it's sort of coming at this idea of getting untethered from the laws of nature and starting to obey these laws that man has made up. It's coming at it from a lot of different angles. And personally, ultimately, I would never be the person that would say it's somehow the fault of the 1%. Then you start to get into a territory of saying that somehow there's certain human beings that are inherently flawed, and I don't believe that at all. I don't think there's anything to support it. Human beings are very much like the other animals in that we're born immature, like puppies or kittens, and what ends up controlling people and driving their choices is culture. And that's the stories that we tell each other. So as easy as it is to say, if we could just get those greedy people and just get their money and redistribute it or whatever, that we would solve our problems, but it wouldn't. We've been doing the power accumulates, the people at the bottom get so angry they're desperate and they're not controllable anymore, and then they get in charge and then they become the 1%. We've been doing that over and over and over again because we've been living in the same culture and we're driven by the same motivations and we're telling each other the same stories, which is very, very different than how we evolved. But it is, in my opinion, disgusting to consume in a closed system at a level that is outrageously conspicuous. That it is happening at the expense of things that are alive, and needless suffering is occurring. So I'm not saying that some of that anger or all of it is misguided, but ultimately there's something else that's bigger, and it's leading to both situations. It's leading to people that are conspicuous consumers that are accumulating insane amounts of power and hundreds of billions of dollars at the expense of other people. And it's also creating people like this guy who's so down and out he can hardly look up or raise his voice very high or whatever. He's in a desperate situation without much of anything. Yeah. The system is making both of those people.
I hate to call this one of my favorite lines because it's one of the most devastating in the song, but it potentially is one of the most inspirational as well. I learned to be hungry, I learned to be cold. What I never got used to was being a hole in the scenery that makes up your grassy knoll.
That's definitely my favorite line in the song too, because it really, for me, goes to the heart of the thing that's the most painful and the most damaging for a person like this, who's now slipped out of community and connection. And that is just being ignored. You have to have oxygen, you have to have water, you have to have food. Outside of those super basic things, I mean, suffocating someone or not giving them water or food, after that, the worst thing that you can do to a human being is deprive them of social connection, because we evolved in small groups and we depend on groups of people to survive. That's how we've gotten to where we are, and it's hardwired into our thinking. And I was a photographer for a long time, then got to teaching and taught creativity. And one of the things that I talked about a lot with people that were afraid to do things socially is that there's some amazing studies on what happens if someone just says no to you in public, if it's a public situation, or what happens to you if you're at a party and the person that's working the party comes by with hors d'oeuvres and you feel like they didn't offer you the plate. For whatever reason, it's offered to the person next to you. That actually registers as a physical pain in your brain. And all kinds of studies have been done to show this. And we're so hardwired to want that connection. And when I am out and I'm walking and I meet someone that I either know is homeless or I think they might be, one of the things I really try to do is make the connection or give them a hug or have some kind of connection that a lot of times homeless people have been seriously removed from that part of connecting with other people. And to me, that is the biggest tragedy, to be sitting in a public place with hundreds of people walking by in a day, and most people are doing everything they can not to see you, not to make eye contact, not to be confronted with the reality of the way that we're living in this system. And it has been interesting that I've played it out a few times only at open mic. Like, that's a song I would never in my wildest dreams think of playing anywhere besides a show. I'd never play that song in a bar. But the gratifying thing about that song is lyrically, I feel like it's the best thing that I've written. And when people have listened to it, it's the song I've gotten the most, feedback, where people go, I love that, I love that song, I heard what you were saying. So that's the other really strange thing about writing songs and sharing what you make with people, is that you have to do it, and you have to do it multiple times to kind of understand how people are relating to it. When you do creative stuff, it's the people that are closest to you support you the most, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be the best people to be the sounding board for stuff that you make. Anyway.
Well, unfortunately, I gave away right off at the front of the interview my attitude toward The Invisible Man.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the kind of words about it. It's, you can get caught up in something that you work really hard on. I think just because when I was a photographer, if you slide through the mud or whatever, that's got to be a great shot. And that's definitely a weakness of editing your own work. But that's a song that I felt like was a good song and was the best song lyrically that I've written. And so it has been gratifying to hear people that I know that are into music now, a handful of people that have said, I think that's the best thing that you've written. And it helps my confidence. When what you make, other people get, it inspires you to keep doing. You think, okay, my instincts they're okay. For me, what I would hope that people would do listening to my songs, if they don't just turn off immediately because it's too heavy and it's not escapist, and there's a lot of that going around, is ask questions instead of just confirming beliefs.
This song is part of an album that you're working on. It's entitled Park Bench Revelator. What's the origin of that wonderful title?
My original connection with Savannah was coming here to teach photography workshops. I was a commercial photographer for a long time, and not too long after I started shooting commercially, I got a chance to assist somebody with a workshop and got into teaching. Loved it, and it became a big part of my photography career. And I started teaching a lot of workshops here in Savannah. And one of the workshops that I taught was helping people get over their fear of approaching strangers on the street. It was called street portraiture. And I don't believe in just surreptitiously taking pictures of people. I think you should always ask for permission. And so it was a workshop about meeting people and creating portraits of people that you're just meeting, getting them to collaborate with you. And people are sort of terrified of getting rejected and how that might go down. But long story short, because homeless people, one of the ways that they're lacking is connection. So on those workshops, we photographed a lot of homeless people. They ended up modeling for us, and I made friends with a lot of people that were homeless. And there was one person in particular that I became really close friends with. Still am close friends with him, and I'm very happy for him that he has a shelter over his head now. But he, in some ways, is somebody that was consciously homeless. He always felt like he could get out of the situation that he was in, but he was sort of choosing this lifestyle. And he also was a very, very smart person, incredibly well-read. Most of the time he walked up on him, he'd be reading a book, and student of history. And he and I would talk about the market system, and it was really interesting to not be homeless and be talking to this homeless guy who was a wise man, and he seemed like a revelator to me, someone that had revelations about the way things are, sort of a wise man. And he always had this same park bench that he sat on. So when I started writing these songs that were sort of folk songs that talked about these philosophical, societal issues, I just thought that would be a cool title. And there's actually a song called Park Bench Revelator. But it's so much like Invisible Man and a couple of the other songs on the record, I'm not totally sure that it'll make the cut. That may just end up being the title of the record.
Another song of yours that sort of fits into the same mold, seems like a natural for this album, is Lifeboat. Is Lifeboat on the album?
Yes.
A lifeboat has a hole in it. A lifeboat has a hole in it. A lifeboat has a hole in it. With the ships beneath the waves. We set sail, the titans cheer. Bend your backs, let go your fears. The water's calm, the skies are clear. The stars are in our eyes. We'll take you to the promised land where nature's tamed and God is man. Put the paper in your hands. Let's go paradise. But now the lifeboat has a hole hole in it. But now the lifeboat has a hole in it. But now the lifeboat has a hole in it. The ship is beneath the waves. Get out your bailing hands, this is the truth. The sea commands before we left. The oldest ones, they swore it'd never last. They did their best to stay ashore. This is our home, we will never pour. I swear I hear their voices now beside the wailing wind. But now the lifeboat has a hole in it. But now the lifeboat has a hole in it. But now the lifeboat has a hole in it. The ship is beneath the waves. I'd rather float instead of sink. I'd rather shine instead of think about the men who sold us all this life. But now I think that man is me, that a sailor, a captain sea, just as vacant as the lost look in our eyes. It's a lost look in our eyes. But now the lifeboat has a hole in it. The lifeboat has a hole in it. The lifeboat has a hole in it. The ship's beneath the waves. The lifeboat has a hole in it. The lifeboat has a hole in it. The lifeboat has a hole in it. The ship's beneath the waves. Darkness falls with the rising tide. Belfast and now the Titans cried. We're almost to the other side.
Lifeboat is a very complicated, multi-dimensional song as well, and it can be viewed in a variety of different perspectives. What is your perspective on this song?
It's another song about the system not working. In a lot of ways, it's a very, very straightforward song. It's the idea of people having a way that they're living. That's what Lifeboat is ultimately about. It's about the idea of somebody saying, there's a better way. You don't have to work as hard. You can live longer. It can be easier. But at what price? And so you have the line in the song about these old people who are the gatherers, hunter-gatherers, and people that wandered, saying, we weren't poor. We had what we needed, and that move away from what's real has just geometrically accelerated. And so the Industrial Revolution is just another example of that. And ultimately, that's where the song leads. When I talk about the Titans, there was still 100 years ago a lot of people that lived on a family farm, and they had an enormous amount of control over their life. They didn't realize that they did. But when the Great Depression happened, even then, 80, 90 years ago, people got into trouble. They still had food, and they had access to water. But now we're down to the point in the developed world, the modern world, a city like Savannah, the trucks stop coming to the grocery stores, which everyone assumes will happen forever, and it won't. How many people have a way to live like a human being, not in this artificial, super complex, totally inefficient system? So ultimately, that's what Lifeboat is about. It's about us sitting at the edge of a precipice, but not wanting to look at that, just like we don't want to see the guy that's homeless or the woman that's homeless. We don't want to admit or challenge the social structure because we're so hardwired to have that connection. And admitting that it's a problem, of course, then means that you've got to take risk, and you have to maybe move outside of your connection to what you think is the right way or the real way. And Lifeboat is just saying the ship is sunk. And it has. If you look at the scientific community, what they say about our situation, it's unbelievable. And people treat that like the homeless person. I'm not going to listen to that. It's just another crank. I'll listen to a politician or somebody. But I mean, I'm not going to go too far into it, but I'll just say one thing that's mind-boggling. We live in a time where after breathing oxygen, water, you're dead in 3 or 4 days without that. If you're really lucky, you maybe go 5 days. And 40% of the world's freshwater aquifers are dangerously low, and it takes thousands and thousands of years for them to fill. 1 billion people don't have access to potable water on a schedule that will keep you alive. The ship has sank. The market system is sank. It's not working. We're seeing the end of it now. Now we don't even know it, but we're sort of in this life support situation, are very, very close to it, where we're going to be forced to recognize some hard limits that are real. Lifeboat is definitely the most apocalyptic. It's the most apocalyptic song on the record. I quit playing it out. I remember I was at North Beach. I was playing that song and had somebody come up to me afterwards and just say, "Man, it's like too heavy for for a bar gig." And there are quite a few people that I know that don't like it.
It's really interesting, particularly in this context, because it shows the optimism of some individuals. When we set sail, water's calm, skies are clear, stars are in our eyes. But then what it started with is, there's a lifeboat, we're in a lifeboat, and it has a hole in it.
Right.
The fact that you're in a lifeboat means the ship has gone down.
Right.
And we're under a very tentative situation right here.
But people don't. They just confirm their beliefs. They don't. This human race still does not want to hear that. Yeah, the whole idea of these people with the stars in their eyes, it's really about sort of being tricked by these people who are not taking you to the promised land. They're just going to use you to accumulate more power. And again, I'm not want to blame those people. They're a product of these beliefs, just like everybody else. But it's not a blame game. It's a system. And that system is just culture. And culture is the stories that we tell each other. Part of the reason the stars in your eyes line is in Lifeboat is we have these techno delusions that we're going to go to other planets. We can't even live on this one, and we want to go to Mars that doesn't have anything to support human beings and try to keep 2 people alive up there for 6 months. I mean, when you ask the questions, it does almost become, it's sad, but it's almost funny how disconnected it is from what actually happens and what's real. And Lifeboat is definitely, out of all the songs on the record, is the one that just tries to say, we're at the end of this. If you want to talk about not time like next week or the kind of time you hear on the news, but if you want to talk about the kind of evolutionary time and anthropological time, what we're doing will not go on much longer. It can't. Simple math.